Welcome to Lecture 21, in which we will focus on the imperfect indicative. In this lecture we're going to cover two things, the meaning and the morphology of the imperfect tense. Firstly, with reference to the meaning, you will learn that the imperfect represents continuous action in the past time. With reference to the morphology, you will learn how the imperfect is built, that it consists of an augment plus the present tense stem plus a connecting vowel plus the secondary personal endings. Firstly, let's talk about the meaning, or if you prefer, the function of the imperfect tense. Greek has two past tenses, two tenses that are used to depict different types of action in the past time, the aorist and the imperfect. The aorist tense describes undefined action in the past, whereas the imperfect describes continuous action in the past. So the aorist describes undefined action in the past time. The imperfect describes continuous or in some sense repeated action in the past time. This is different to the present tense. Greek has only one present tense, so the present tense in Greek can represent either continuous or undefined action. But when it comes to the past tense, there are two, with the imperfect specifically depicting continuous or repeated action in the past time. Turning to the translation of the imperfect, we usually translate the imperfect as a past continuous action. We use the helping verb was or were for this, such as I was running or they were eating. Let's look at two quick examples. Firstly, "Hi Pharisei elegon tis mathetes avtou." The Pharisees were saying to his disciples. Notice that the imperfect tense elegon is translated as were saying, indicating that there was an ongoing act of speaking happening in the past time. Secondly, evaptizonto hip Ioannou. They were being baptized by John. The imperfect verb evaptizonto is describing a repeated or ongoing action in the past time. They were being baptized. Notice that in both cases we used the helping verb were to convey the idea of ongoing or continuous action in the past time. Now we can turn our attention to the morphology of the imperfect tense. In other words, how is the imperfect formed and how can you recognize when you are looking at an imperfect verb? At this point you need to learn an important new concept, which is a big part of the grammar of the verb. It is known as the augment. Greek adds a prefix to a verb to indicate past time. The prefix is called an augment. The prefix is usually epsilon. It is always epsilon if the root of the verb begins with a consonant. You will learn a little bit later what the augment looks like if a verb begins with a vowel. So the prefix added to the beginning of a verb to indicate past time is called an augment, and when the verb starts with a consonant, that augment is the letter epsilon. Since the imperfect is a past tense, it uses the augment. The imperfect also uses secondary personal endings. Greek has two sets of personal endings, primary and secondary. Primary tenses do not have an augment, whereas secondary tenses have an augment. Since the imperfect is a past tense, it uses the augment, and since it uses the augment, it's a secondary tense. Therefore, it uses secondary personal endings. This chart shows the building blocks for the imperfect active indicative. The imperfect is built upon the present stem. The augment, usually epsilon, is added as a prefix. Then the connecting vowel is added, and finally the secondary active personal endings are added. Thus we get e plus li plus a plus elion. This would be the imperfect active indicative first person singular, I was loosing. So the present tense stem, then we add the augment in the front and the connecting vowel and secondary active endings to build the imperfect active indicative. Here is the paradigm for the imperfect active indicative using the verb lio. The one singular is elion. The formation is the augment epsilon plus the present tense stem li plus the connecting vowel omicron plus the first person ending ni. Elion, I was loosing. The two singular is elies. We have the augment epsilon plus the present tense stem li plus the connecting vowel epsilon plus the two singular ending sigma. Elies, you were loosing. The three singular is elie or elien because of the movable ni. The formation is the augment epsilon plus the present tense stem li plus the connecting vowel epsilon. There's no personal ending for the three singular in the secondary endings, and there's an optional movable ni. Hence, elie or elien, he, she, or it was loosing. The one plural form is eliomen. The augment is epsilon, the present tense stem li, connecting vowel omicron, and the one plural personal ending men, loosing. The two plural is eliete. We have the augment epsilon plus the present tense stem li plus the connecting vowel epsilon plus the two plural ending te. Eliete, you were loosing, and the three plural is elion. We have the augment epsilon plus the present tense stem li plus the connecting vowel omicron plus the three plural personal ending ni, they were loosing. You should note that the one singular and three plural forms are identical. They are both elion. Only the context would enable you to tell whether a particular form is one singular, I was loosing, or three plural, they were loosing. This chart shows the building blocks for the imperfect middle or passive indicative. As is the case in the present tense, in the imperfect the middle and passive forms are identical. Only the context will allow you to decide whether a particular form is middle or passive. The building blocks are the augment plus the present tense stem plus the connecting vowel plus the secondary passive personal endings. In the example given, the augment is epsilon, the present tense stem of lio is li, the connecting vowel is omicron, and the secondary passive personal ending is main. This gives us eliomain, I was being loosed, or I was loosing myself. Here is the paradigm for the imperfect middle or passive indicative. The one singular is eliomain. It is formed from the augment epsilon plus the present tense stem li plus the connecting vowel omicron plus the one singular passive ending main. Eliomain, I was being loosed. The two singular is eliu. It is formed from the augment epsilon plus the present tense stem li plus the connecting vowel epsilon plus the personal ending so. The intervocalic sigma drops out and epsilon omicron contract to form u. This gives us the rather unusual ending u. So eliu, you were being loosed. The three singular, elieto, it's formed from the augment epsilon plus the present tense stem li plus the connecting vowel epsilon plus the three singular passive ending to. Elieto, he, she, or it was being loosed. The one plural is eliometha. It's formed from the augment epsilon plus the present tense stem li plus the connecting vowel omicron plus the personal ending metha. Eliometha, we were being loosed. The two plural is elieste from the augment epsilon plus the present tense stem li plus the connecting vowel epsilon plus the personal ending sthe. Eliesthe, you are being loosed. Lastly, the three plural elionta. The augment is epsilon, the present tense stem li, the connecting vowel omicron, and the three plural personal ending nta. Elionta, they were being loosed. Verbs that begin with vowels require vocalic augments. If a verb starts with a single vowel, that vowel lengthens. Alpha lengthens to eta, epsilon also lengthens to eta, omicron lengthens to omega, and all the others don't change. So if a verb begins with a single vowel, the vowel lengthens. Alpha to eta, epsilon to eta, omicron to omega, and everything else remains unchanged. Let us look at a simple example in each category. Firstly, working from the verb argo, I lead, the stem is arg. It begins with alpha, which lengthens to eta as an augment. Thus we get ag plus the connecting vowel omicron plus the personal ending, for example, ni, would give us agon. I was leading. Secondly, the verb egiro means I raise. The stem is egir. It begins with epsilon, which will lengthen to eta as a vocalic augment. Thus we would have agir plus the connecting vowel omicron plus the personal ending ni would give us agiron, I was raising. And thirdly, using the verb omnio, which means I swear, it begins with omicron, which will lengthen to omega as a vocalic augment. Thus we would get omni plus the connecting vowel omicron and the personal ending ni would give us omnion. I was swearing. So it's really critical to remember that if a verb begins with a single vowel, it lengthens alpha to eta, epsilon to eta, omicron to omega, and everything else doesn't change. But not all verbs that begin with a vowel begin with a single vowel. What happens if a verb begins with a diphthong? If a verb begins with a diphthong, it may lengthen or remain unchanged. If it lengthens, it does so exactly the same way that the single vowels do. Alpha to eta, epsilon to eta, and omicron to omega. So it may lengthen or it may remain unchanged. Let's look at one example in each category. Let's begin with the verb evcharisteo, which means I give thanks. It begins with the diphthong epsilon, epsilon. Epsilon lengthens to eta as a vocalic augment. Thus we get evchariste, and we add the connecting vowel omicron and the personal ending ni. Epsilon omicron are going to contract to form u, and that's going to give us evcharistun. I was giving thanks. So evcharisteo is an example of a verb in which the diphthong does lengthen. But now let's consider the verb hefrisko, I find. It also begins with the diphthong epsilon, epsilon. But in this case, the diphthong remains unchanged. The epsilon does not lengthen to eta. Thus, the imperfect is efrisk plus omicron plus ni. In other words, hefriskon, I was finding. So both verbs begin with the same diphthong. In one instance, we see that the epsilon lengthens as a normal vocalic augment. In the other one, it doesn't lengthen. This is typical. Both are possible. But even without the augment, we can see the secondary personal endings on hefriskon, which mark it as an imperfect. So vocalic augments for verbs that begin with diphthongs, be aware they may lengthen or they may remain unchanged. If they lengthen, they do so according to the normal patterns, alpha and epsilon going to eta, and omicron going to omega. There is one more thing you need to know about vocalic augments. When a verb starts with a diphthong and the first letter of the diphthong lengthens, if the second letter is iota, it subscripts. I will say that again. When a verb starts with a diphthong and the first letter of the diphthong lengthens, if the second letter is iota, it subscripts. Once again, let's look at two examples to get the idea. Firstly, let's use the verb ero. The stem is alpha iota rho. When the imperfect is formed, the alpha lengthens to eta, that's the normal vocalic augment, and the iota subscripts, which gives us aron. I was taking up. Similarly, consider ikodome, from ikodomeo, I build. Omicron lengthens to omega as the standard vocalic augment, and the iota is going to subscript. Thus the imperfect form becomes okodomun, I was building, or I was building up. So when a verb starts with a diphthong and the first letter of the diphthong does lengthen, if the second letter is iota, it will subscript. The last complication regarding augments relates to verbs that have a preposition in compound. We call them compound verbs. When a verb has a preposition in compound, the augment attaches to the verbal part of the compound verb after the preposition. The final vowel of the preposition, if it ends in a vowel, may drop out. This is important because it sometimes obscures the augment. Remember that you do not look for the augment in front of a preposition in compound, you look for it between the compounded preposition and the verb itself. The augment attaches to the verbal part of the compound verb after the preposition, and if the preposition ends in a vowel, that vowel may drop out. Here are two examples to illustrate the idea. Firstly, kat evenon, I was going down. It's from kata plus the augment epsilon plus the present tense stem ven, connecting vowel omicron, personal ending ni, kat evenon. You can see that the final alpha in the preposition kata has dropped out when the augment was placed between the preposition and the verbal stem. Secondly, we have ex evale. Ex evale. He or she was casting out. It's from the preposition ek plus the augment epsilon plus the present tense stem val plus the connecting vowel epsilon, and in the third person singular there is no personal ending, hence we get ex evale. Notice, as you've learned before, that the final kappa of the preposition ek changes to xi when it's followed by a vowel. So the addition of augment, which is a vowel, causes this change in ek, which goes to x. Ex evale. The key principle then, the augment attaches to the verbal part of a compound verb after the preposition. The final vowel of the preposition may drop out. We are now going to analyze some of the imperfect forms that you encounter in exercise 21, showing how they are built. In other words, we're going to look at the morphology or the formation of particular examples. This will help you to see how the various pieces of the puzzle come together. Evaptizen, he, she, or it was baptizing, imperfect active indicative, third person singular, from baptizo. The verbal root is in fact baptid. Remember that stems ending in izo or azo in the present tense usually have roots that end in a dental. So the root is baptid, but the present tense stem is baptiz. The formation of the imperfect, we can see the augment epsilon plus the present tense stem baptiz plus the connecting vowel epsilon. The third person singular form has no personal ending, but it has an optional movable ni. Hence we get evaptizen. We are now going to analyze some of the imperfect forms that you encounter in exercise 21, showing how they are built. In other words, we're going to look at the morphology or the formation of particular examples. This will help you to see how the various pieces of the puzzle come together. Ebaptizonto, they were being baptized. Imperfect, passive indicative, third person plural, from baptizo. The verbal root is vaptid. The present tense stem, however, is vaptiz. So the formation is the augment epsilon plus the present tense stem vaptiz plus the connecting vowel omicron plus the third person middle passive personal ending nta, evaptizonto. We are now going to analyze some of the imperfect forms that you encounter in exercise 21, showing how they are built. In other words, we're going to look at the morphology or the formation of particular examples. This will help you to see how the various pieces of the puzzle come together. Ex evalon, I was casting out, or they were casting out. It's imperfect active indicative, either first person singular or third person plural, from ekvalo, I cast out. The verbal root is in fact val with a single lambda, but the present tense stem is formed by doubling the lambda, hence we get val. The formation of ex evalon is from the preposition in compound ek plus the augment epsilon plus the present tense stem val plus the connecting vowel omicron plus the first person or third person ending ni. It's either first singular or third plural. Then because the preposition ek is followed by a vowel, the kappa goes to xi, and this gives us ex evalon. Only the context would allow you to know whether it's first person singular or third person plural. We are now going to analyze some of the imperfect forms that you encounter in exercise 21, showing how they are built. In other words, we're going to look at the morphology or the formation of particular examples. This will help you to see how the various pieces of the puzzle come together. Eperota, he, she, or it was asking, imperfect active indicative third person singular, from eperotao, I ask. The formation of this one is quite complex because there are several things happening at the same time. The verbal root is erota, erota. We have the preposition epi in compound, but the final iota of epi drops out because it's followed by another vowel. Then we have a vocalic augment. The initial epsilon on the root erota augments to eta. It lengthens. Typical vocalic augment. Next we recognize that this is a contract verb ending in alpha, so it's an alpha contract. When the connecting vowel epsilon is added, alpha and epsilon contract to alpha. So effectively the epsilon drops out. There's no person ending for the third singular. And when you put all these changes together, you get eperota. He, she, or it was asking. I encourage you to study this one closely and make sure that you can understand all the changes that are taking place. We are now going to analyze some of the imperfect forms that you encounter in exercise 21, showing how they are built. In other words, we're going to look at the morphology or the formation of particular examples. This will help you to see how the various pieces of the puzzle come together. Eperoton, I was asking, or they were asking, imperfect active indicative, either first person singular or third person plural, from eperotao, I ask. The root is erota. We have the preposition epi in compound, but the final iota of epi drops out because it's followed by a vowel. Next we have a vocalic augment. The initial epsilon on the stem erota lengthens to eta as the augment. We add the connecting vowel omicron, which contracts with alpha to form omega, and we add the one singular or the three plural personal ending ni to get eperoton. I was asking, or they were asking. As usual, the context will allow you to determine whether it's a first singular or a third plural. We are now going to analyze some of the imperfect forms that you encounter in exercise 21, showing how they are built. In other words, we're going to look at the morphology or the formation of particular examples. This will help you to see how the various pieces of the puzzle come together. Ergeto, he, she, or it was coming, imperfect deponent third person singular of ergome. The stem is erg. We have a vocalic augment. The initial epsilon lengthens to eta as the augment. We add the connecting vowel epsilon and the three singular personal ending ta, and we get ergeto. We are now going to analyze some of the imperfect forms that you encounter in exercise 21, showing how they are built. In other words, we're going to look at the morphology or the formation of particular examples. This will help you to see how the various pieces of the puzzle come together. Ergonta, they were coming, imperfect deponent indicative third person plural from ergome. We have a vocalic augment. The initial epsilon on the stem erg lengthens to eta. We add the connecting vowel omicron and the three plural personal ending nta, and we get ergonta. They were coming. We are now going to analyze some of the imperfect forms that you encounter in exercise 21, showing how they are built. In other words, we're going to look at the morphology or the formation of particular examples. This will help you to see how the various pieces of the puzzle come together. Epistevete, you were believing, imperfect active indicative second person plural from pistevo, I believe. The present tense stem is the same as the root, it's pistev. We simply add the augment epsilon to the present tense stem pistev, then we add the connecting vowel epsilon and the second person plural ending te, and we get epistevete. We are now going to analyze some of the imperfect forms that you encounter in exercise 21, showing how they are built. In other words, we're going to look at the morphology or the formation of particular examples. This will help you to see how the various pieces of the puzzle come together. Elali, he, she, or it was saying. It's the imperfect active indicative third person singular from laleo, I say. The root is lale, which is also the present tense stem. The formation is the augment epsilon plus the present tense stem lale plus the connecting vowel epsilon, and there's no personal ending for the third person singular. Then epsilon epsilon contracts to epsilon iota to give us elali. We are now going to analyze some of the imperfect forms that you encounter in exercise 21, showing how they are built. In other words, we're going to look at the morphology or the formation of particular examples. This will help you to see how the various pieces of the puzzle come together. Ekueta, he, she, or it was being heard, imperfect middle passive indicative third person singular from akuo, I hear. The verbal root is aku, which is also the present tense stem. We have a vocalic augment. The initial alpha lengthens to eta as the augment. We add the connecting vowel epsilon and the third person singular ending ta, and we get ekueta. We are now going to analyze some of the imperfect forms that you encounter in exercise 21, showing how they are built. In other words, we're going to look at the morphology or the formation of particular examples. This will help you to see how the various pieces of the puzzle come together. This is the end of Lecture 21.